when a trigger-happy HOA guard pulled a gun on 32-year-old Maya Torres for walking her dog in her own neighborhood. He thought he was dealing with an intruder. He had no clue that Maya, dressed in casual sweats, was an FBI tactical commander working undercover, and her swift response, backed by a badge he never expected, left him stunned and the HOA scrambling to cover their tracks. Maya Torres had returned to her father's home in the gated Crestwood Pines community after a grueling 6-month undercover assignment in Chicago. At 32, she was a seasoned FBI agent leading a tactical response team that handled high-risk operations. Her father, Carlos Torres, a 60-year-old retired electrician, had lived in Crestwood Pines for a decade, a quiet enclave of manicured lawns and upscale homes. Maya, who kept a low profile to protect her identity, was staying with Carlos to decompress before her next assignment. She blended in effortlessly, petite, with her dark hair pulled into a messy bun, often seen walking her father's golden retriever, Max, in sweatpants and a hoodie. To the neighbors, she was just Carlos's daughter, home for a visit. To the FBI, she was a highly trained operative with a knack for staying calm under pressure. Crestwood Pines was governed by a strict HOA, led by Barbara Klein, a 58-year-old real estate agent who treated the community like her personal fiefdom. The HOA employed a private security firm, Pinnacle Security, to patrol the gates and enforce rules. The guard on duty that evening was Derek Hansen, a 28-year-old former mall cop with a chip on his shoulder and a concealed carry permit he was all too eager to use. Derek had been with Pinnacle for 6 months, hired after the HOA demanded tighter security following a string of minor vandalism incidents, mostly kids spray painting mailboxes. Derek took his role seriously, patrolling the streets in a golf cart, his holster prominently displayed. On a cool Thursday evening, Maya took Max for a walk. She wore her usual disguise, a faded hoodie, leggings, and sneakers, her FBI credentials tucked into a slim wallet in her pocket. Max, a friendly but excitable dog, tugged at his leash as they strolled along the sidewalk near the community's entrance. The street was quiet, with only the hum of sprinklers and the occasional car passing by. Maya kept to herself, her eyes scanning the surroundings out of habit. She noticed Derek's golf cart parked near the gate, but thought nothing of it. Security was a constant presence in Crestwood Pines. As Maya and Max approached a small park area, Max spotted a squirrel and lunged, pulling the leash taut. Maya gently corrected him, but the sudden movement caught Derek's attention. He stepped out of his cart, his hand resting on his holster. "Hey," he called out, his voice sharp. "You need to control that dog." Maya turned, assessing Derek in an instant, young, tense, and trying too hard to project authority. She nodded politely. "He's fine, just got excited. We're heading back now." But Derek wasn't satisfied. He'd been told to watch for suspicious individuals, and Maya, unfamiliar to him and dressed casually, set off his radar. "Do you even live here?" Derek asked, stepping closer. "I haven't seen you before, and that dog's a nuisance." Maya kept her tone calm, her training kicking in. "I'm staying with my father, Carlos Torres, at 312 Oak Lane. Max is his dog. We're just out for a walk." Derek's eyes narrowed. "I'm gonna need to see some ID," he said, his hand still on his holster. Maya raised an eyebrow, her instincts telling her to de-escalate. "I don't have my driver's license on me," she said. "But I can give you my father's address and phone number if you need to verify." Derek shook his head, his voice rising. "No ID, no proof. For all I know, you're trespassing." Before Maya could respond, Derek took a step forward, his hand moving to unholster his gun. "Don't move," he said, drawing the weapon and holding it low but pointed in her direction. Max growled softly, sensing the tension, but Maya tightened her grip on the leash, her body still but her mind racing. She'd faced armed threats before, cartel enforcers, gang members, even rogue militias, but this was different. This was her father's neighborhood, and the man pointing a gun at her was a glorified security guard with no business escalating a routine encounter. "Put the gun down," Maya said, her voice steady but firm. "I'm not a threat, and you're making a mistake." Derek's face hardened, his grip on the gun tightening. "I'll decide that," he snapped. You're coming with me to the gatehouse until we sort this out. By now, a few neighbors had noticed the commotion and stepped onto their porches, watching from a distance. One of them, Mrs. Larson, a retired nurse who knew Carlos, called out, "What's going on, Derek?" "That's Carlos's daughter." But Derek ignored her, his focus locked on Maya. Maya's training took over. She knew better than to make sudden movements, but she also knew she had to end this before it spiraled further. Slowly, she reached into her pocket, keeping her movements deliberate. "I'm going to show you my ID," she said, her voice calm but authoritative. Derek tensed, raising the gun slightly. "Keep your hands where I can see them," he barked. Maya ignored the command, pulling out her wallet and flipping it open to reveal her FBI credentials. The badge gleamed under the streetlight, the words Federal Bureau of Investigation, unmistakable, along with her title, Tactical Commander, Special Operations. Derek froze, his eyes widening as he registered the badge. Maya held it up, her gaze locked on his. "I'm Special Agent Maya Torres," she said. "Lower your weapon. Now." Her tone left no room for argument, carrying the weight of someone who'd given orders in life-or-death situations. Derek's hand shook, and he slowly holstered the gun, his face pale. I didn't know," he stammered. "You didn't say you were FBI." Maya didn't flinch. "I shouldn't have to," she said. "You drew a weapon on a resident walking her dog. That's not your job." Mrs. Larson, still watching, had already called Carlos, who arrived minutes later, his pickup truck pulling up to the curb. "Maya, you okay?" he asked, his voice thick with concern as he stepped out. Maya nodded, keeping her eyes on Derek. "I'm fine, Dad. Just a misunderstanding." Carlos turned to Derek, his usual calm demeanor replaced by a father's protective edge. "What the hell were you thinking, pulling a gun on my daughter?" Derek opened his mouth to respond, but no words came. The neighbors, now a small crowd, murmured among themselves, some filming the exchange on their phones. Maya handed her credentials to Mrs. Larson, who'd approached to mediate. "Can you confirm this for him?" Maya asked. Mrs. Larson, familiar with Carlos and his family, nodded and showed the badge to Derek. "She's exactly who she says she is," Mrs. Larson said, her tone sharp. "You owe her an apology." Derek muttered a half-hearted sorry, but Maya wasn't interested. She turned to Carlos. "Let's go home. Max needs his dinner." As they walked away, Derek stood frozen, the weight of his mistake sinking in. By the next morning, the incident was the talk of Crestwood Pines. Barbara Klein, the HOA president, got wind of it through the neighborhood group chat, where residents were already demanding answers. Barbara called an emergency board meeting, inviting Derek and his supervisor from Pinnacle Security. Derek, still shaken, recounted his version of events, claiming he'd followed protocol for suspicious individuals. His supervisor, a gruff man named Ron, backed him up, saying Derek was trained to prioritize community safety. But the board wasn't convinced. One member, Tom, a retired teacher, pointed out that pulling a gun on a resident was a massive overreach. "She's FBI, for God's sake," Tom said. "What if she'd been hurt?" Carlos, who attended the meeting at Tom's insistence, spoke calmly but firmly. "My daughter's a federal agent. She's trained to handle threats, but she shouldn't have to deal with one in her own neighborhood. Your guard needs to be fired, and the HOA needs to rethink its security approach." Barbara, sensing the PR nightmare, promised to investigate. She also sent Maya a formal apology letter, citing an unfortunate misunderstanding and offering to waive the family's HOA fees for a year. Maya and Carlos didn't respond. They weren't interested in gestures. Pinnacle Security suspended Derek pending a review, but the damage was done. The neighborhood's trust in the HOA and its security firm plummeted. Residents began questioning Barbara's leadership, with some calling for a new election. Maya, meanwhile, kept a low profile, walking Max at different times to avoid further attention. She reported the incident to her FBI supervisor, who filed a formal complaint with Pinnacle Security and the local police, citing improper use of a firearm. The police investigated and found Derek's actions didn't meet the threshold for criminal charges, but they issued a warning and recommended he lose his security license. The HOA, under pressure, terminated their contract with Pinnacle Security a month later, replacing them with a smaller firm with stricter oversight. Barbara stepped down as president at the next election, replaced by Tom, who prioritized transparency and resident input. Maya, ready to move on, left for her next assignment a few weeks later, her identity still a quiet secret to most of Crestwood Pines. Carlos, proud but protective, told neighbors only what they needed to know. His daughter was someone you didn't mess with. The story of the HOA guard and the FBI agent spread beyond Crestwood Pines, picked up by a local news outlet covering neighborhood disputes. It became a cautionary tale about overzealous security and snap judgments. For Maya, it was just another day on the job, albeit one closer to home than she'd have liked. She left Crestwood Pines with Max's leash in one hand and her badge in the other, a reminder that even in disguise, she was never defenseless.